Well, hello, I'm back again. Do you know, do I ever do anything else? Me and the shooty doll, we're here again. So, welcome. Nice, pleasant chat this afternoon with amongst friends. Nostalgia mixed with a bit of spike and a bit of humour with a bit of fond memory. The point is on this one, it's a nice umbrella theme. What did television ever teach us? The good, the bad, the ugly. Let's be honest, sometimes it was meant to teach us. Sometimes it accidentally taught us. Sometimes we were told off, square eyes, the whole lot. I don't know where we're going to end up today. I know I've won a few interesting segments, but we could go anywhere on this one. So I need to get my friends on board. And of course, I have two decent friends today. Let's get Boomer Doug on first. Hiya, Boomer Doug.
Hello. Hello from what apparently is the hottest city in the world. So I'm currently sitting here with no pants on.
No, that's only on the detox.
Hello. That's only on the detox. Yes, I shouldn't have ever said that, should I? By the way, pants in Australia means something different. It means trousers, not
there
undies.
You go.
Let's just change the
and
subject.
To keep us right, we've also...
Lovely to be here. It's been a while.
To keep us right, we've also got Simon. Good to see you, Simon.
Good evening, all.
Evening, all. We're doing crime drama later. Evening, all. He's doing Dixon of Dock Green already.
I know.
So, I did have a slightly dodgy internet, so I might come and go a bit. It seems
right.
It's all right. It's a slightly dodgy show that you're on. So
well, we're going to start off and running. You know, there was a time when it was TV in one room, and you know, some of us did have that. I thought it was a lovely thing, actually, that we were with our parents, for good or bad, and you were watching telly, embarrassed sometimes, laughing sometimes, having fun, sharing sweets, the lot. And this was TV as was. And yeah, listen with mother, some would call it.
That was called.
Yeah.
Yeah, 405 television was called high definition, I'll have you know.
Yes, you could see just about. But I want to start off, when you were a kid, TV, we copied, didn't we? And sometimes that was good and sometimes that was bad. Now, I will just say on the right there is my example, the Fonz from Happy Days. You wanted the leather jacket.
My example.
You wanted the leather jacket and all the rest of it. However, I remember being in primary school when somebody wrote on their exercise book, the Fonz is cool, and they got slippered. The Fonz was not cool to the primary school teachers.
It wasn't cool at all.
So what were you going to say, Doug, as I was talking then?
Sorry, mate. It's just that it's all falling into place today. Danny Wilde, I mean, I was going to give this anecdote later, but when I was 12 years old, my parents bought me an imitation leather jacket like Danny Wilde. So I was a 12-year-old trying to pretend I was a 45-year-old Playboy millionaire, which is probably a bit weird. So you've hit my sweet spot tonight. And Jason King, there you go. That's my other fashion icon. Those little cuffs that he did on the sleeves there. That's speaking of influences. I did that one. I like the matching tie. This is 1970s. The matching tie with the shirt and turn the cuffs up. Jason King.
You see,
obviously I couldn't.
But this is it. We can list Happy Days, Jason King, you know, the Persuaders or anything. But the point is, kids do pick up on things, and some of them are not meant to be picked up on by the parents. And then there could be bad habits, or they're habits that get you slippered at school. Or they give you a mindset. And, you know, I've just done like thousands of Doctor Who streams, it feels like. And remember, that is the issue that's been discussed even in 2025, that some TV programs, their content on unsettled issues, and the kids might copy. And so we might be talking about, you know, whether you wear flares, you leather jackets or white vest, and we might be having a nice nostalgic little kind of laugh about it. But it shows you the power of imitation by TV.
When I was about the age of some of those programs, I was accosted by two grown-up, as in 12-year-old girls, I suspect. And they said to me, "Are you a mod or a rocker?" And I hadn't got a clue what either of them was. And because I didn't watch my TV. Because my dad worked for the BBC, and I was told that the television that we had, which looked very much like the one you showed in the picture just then, and the knob was broken, and it didn't work on ITV.
I know that
I
feeling.
subsequently discovered it was perfectly satisfactory. I fixed it.
Well, it just shows you the lingo. Stephen Braddock mentioned here, we used to play Space 1999 in the school playground. You see, yeah, we used to play, well, we played Davros for a while after Genesis Part 1. I had a snazzy red jacket, so I was always Commander John Koenig in charge of the missions. And it just shows you, but this is the point again about what does it teach us, good or bad, that children suddenly latch onto something. And so the lingo at school, like the poor kid who wrote the Fonz is cool on his maths book and got slippered. Yeah. He just thought the Fonz was cool, and that's the expression, but that was not allowed because it was seen as a graffiti in those days. This kid, they just happened to have a certain jacket on, and everyone goes, "Oh, that's Space 1999," and that might make you cool. That might make you popular.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
I had no idea about any of that at the time.
Lee Smith.
I'll have to do my bit later when I.
Lee Smith. I used to watch bizarre documentaries and play and plays on what's that? Oh, and plays on TV as a kid. Yes, really obscure subjects. And Stephen Braddock still going here. Also, me and my brother had a Man from Uncle spy set, and we always played as Napoleon.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
Yeah, yeah. So let's just kind of wade in a little bit further. Now, even just in the early days, I mean, it's beyond me in a way, but everyone talks about Listen with Mother, and they use even some of the programs like Andy Pandy, the Flower Pot Men, etc., as part of that umbrella theme. So there were certain programs, as we know, in each country that were intended almost to be babysitting fodder and to help. Yeah. Sexist here, mother, bring up the kids or teach them things or just give the mum a few minutes. Obviously, I find it funny now. I find it funny now that the Flower Pot Men had a garbled language, and how the hell that was teaching us anything.
Yeah.
But the Teletubbies,
yeah, we used to love it, didn't we? But it was ridiculous.
But the Teletubbies years later did the same thing when they seemed to talk a weird language.
They did. They did, and my kids loved it, so it was obviously doing the job.
Apparently, it was educational, as in it teaches that first level of communication. Obviously, I was brought up on stuff like Play School. Of course, Play School you got in Australia as well.
Good old Brian.
Still, to this day, still on. Still on.
To me, the comfort there of getting to know TV and whether it taught me anything or not was that lovely moment in school for my age group with a cool, if you're lucky, bottle of milk. You could hear the crate being carried in. They wheeled this enormous TV with VCR into a room. You joined 2 or 3 classes together, all sat on the floor carpet, and you'd watch Play School. And you would go through, and let's face it, we all know it, you go to the round window, the square window, you were learning shapes, you were learning various things, you were learning how to play, but for some reason it settled you. And I quite liked having this little milk with a straw as I watched Play School and various other things later on. Just interesting how they warned us about square eyes, but from being a kid at school, they were teaching you to watch telly.
Yeah,
I watched the Apollo shots at school, at primary school, on a huge television. That was marvelous. And my grandfather was a headmaster, and when I went to Jersey, which was during the Jersey summer holidays, I had the entire school television to myself. And I watched some football thing that happened in 1966, if I remember correctly. We won. Yes, I haven't watched subsequently, but yes.
Well, as I said, and what we are learning on this Talking TV, everyone, which is we're not just going to sit here proving we haven't got Alzheimer's. We're trying to actually concoct. Yeah, we're trying to concoct a discussion where we're saying, what were the good elements of television and bad in education or lessons in life? So, you know, as I said, there was a kind of philosophy of making the kids sit down with their milk and watch this program. Actually, the teachers were having a DOS for half an hour. Let's be frank. That's what was going on there. And that's what Simon's just laid into by saying, hey, we'll put the Apollo mission on for a few hours and the kids will stay in the hall. There was a lot of lazy teaching going on, I do recall. I mean, I was aware that we once had to watch the Ashes in primary school. They put the Ashes on in the hall, the Ashes cricket. And then we just sat there. Didn't know the cricket rules, but it's
very educational.
We had one male primary school teacher and he liked cricket. There you go. So I learned that TV, it was a babysitting device, even for the teachers. Having been a teacher years later, I don't know how you got the chance to have hours of DOS, but there you go. Lee Smith, I watched TV as a toddler with my late uncle who was 10 years older than me, so I ended up watching what he liked. He got me into sci-fi. Well, you'll be grateful for that.
Good on him.
I know. Well, actually, it was always interesting if you had a babysitter. The babysitters were in charge of the telly, and they didn't watch the same stuff as your parents.
Yeah.
And so it was always a bit interesting that they suddenly took a detour. So, for example, that's why Shoestring, because Mum and Dad were out on a Sunday night, and Shoestring was on, and they would watch Shoestring. So you started watching Shoestring because of the babysitter.
It was. Yes, he should have come back again, but he didn't. I don't know why.
I don't know either. Might have been Trevor.
So one of the famous ones, if you're talking about, it doesn't have to be kids' television. It doesn't have to be about school. And I will ask the thread where you'd like to take this and what TV taught us, good, bad, ugly. Now, Grange Hill scared me to death. I was in, we call it now year 6, last year at primary school, and Grange Hill came on the telly. And Grange Hill had people fighting. It had people taking on teachers, cheeking, catapults, everything. It wasn't just William. This really scared me. And so Grange Hill had me bricking it before I went to secondary school. So it taught me that the world, I mean, to me, the Grange Hill, as it was, looked like the Bronx. It was like, oh my God, I'm going to get lynched. Does anybody have fond memories or fears or nightmares of any programs that were teaching them the wrong things? I mean, there's Mum and Dad saying, love school, go to school, do your best. And there's Grange Hill on BBC One scaring me to death.
I didn't get any.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that. No, the Grange Hill thing's funny because we used to get it here in Australia, but it probably wasn't as popular, I guess. But the high school I went to was actually quite rough. I don't know if you guys had this tradition, which I don't think is around now. It was called the Royal Flush, where the first year students were chased around and heads were basically dumped down the toilet, and there was a flush after that. And for the first 2 weeks of school, it was just run for your life. So I think Grange Hill, in a way, prepared me for what could happen because in my case, the school I went to wasn't unlike it, even though it was Australia. So it might have educated me and prepared me for the worst.
But I can see why parents of the time would say Grange Hill was teaching bad habits, because I was watching kids cheek teachers. I was watching kids truanting.
Yes.
I was watching kids fight and get away with it. I was watching kids bully and get away with it because Grange Hill was much more authentic. I mean, it was a very London school, and I appreciate in Middlesbrough, no, you were still going to be heavily disciplined in Middlesbrough, and none of this was going to happen, really. But it kind of gave you that metropolitan outlook, and that scared us. And I can imagine parents probably going, I remember at the time people were saying, I don't want my kids watching Grange Hill. So, you know, there's that element to that. I mean, that's my example. If you want to bring any in, otherwise I know I'll just be
the drug issue with Xano, was it?
Yes,
that was a very powerful little thing. I mean, I was either too old or too young to be affected by it personally, but I knew it was a biggie.
It was a funny one, Simon, because it was the just saying no. It was the drugs, wasn't it? And it went all the way to Nancy Reagan in America, I remember, and all the rest of it. But what got me was, and this is when I think TV, including our program Doctor Who, sometimes imposes this imposes this metropolitan view, which the rest of us aren't seeing. So, for example, I'm not saying there weren't drugs anywhere else in the country. Of course there were, but obviously London will have faced a bit more of it. And of course, Grange Hill thought it was trendy and important to do a show on it. Well, more than one show. But of course, sat in Middlesbrough, I was thinking, actually, a lot of us thought that was not worthy, and we actually thought it was boring because it didn't relate to us. Do you know what I mean? It was just gone. This Zammo and taking drugs, it looked dirty to me. I mean, I certainly didn't like the look of it. It was just interesting because there's us from just a town, and Grange Hill was just, well, number one, it was teaching us that stuff like this is out there. We didn't even know about it. I wonder whether it told us about it in a way that didn't need to. Actually, it's funny, Simon.
I think you're probably right. Yes, yes. I fear that happens quite a lot with people saying, "Oh, this terrible, awful thing's happening," and people say, "What?" And then they look into it, and then they get all frightened.
Especially kids at that age. You know, well, now with the blooming internet, we'd go, "Oh, you can do what?" You know, oh God, disaster. So it is an interesting one that Simon comes and goes. He's a bit like the Tom Baker doctor, I think, aren't you, at the moment?
You can see me go, but I keep being able to see everybody else. So I think it's at your end the problem lies.
Oh, blame me. Oh, I've heard that one before. Yeah, we've heard that. Yeah.
There we go. Okay.
This is all right, leaving me. That's the professional ex-television announcers, engineers comment.
This is one thing I wanted to just kind of mention to people. Does everybody in Britain remember this? Staring at those little dashes and seeing them bit by bit either disappear or build up as you counted down to an independent television schools and colleges program.
Play the music.
Yeah. And again, both channels did it. And of course, yet again, the teachers are sitting you down while they're having a cup of tea and a natter, or getting their marking done, and you're sat watching some drama. Yeah.
We had those too.
Our school wasn't rich enough to have tea.
I remember one of the shows I'll see what you two lads and the thread thinks, but I remember distinctly, and it was one of my last years at primary school, it was How We Used to Live. And it was the Victorian one. And it was a series, you know, a drama. And it was to teach us about the Victorians. So basically, the teacher could have a frieze on the wall and all the rest of it. And you followed this Victorian family, and you do a little bit of work, maybe do a story, and everything was linked up. So basically, that caught me at a rich spot. How We Used to Live, the Victorians. They did many after that, Edwardians and everything, but it was just the right age for me to want to know about the Victorians and inventions and workhouses and stuff like that.
Oh, it was wonderful stuff, yes. I mean, the BBC and the ITV put out glorious, hello there, put out glorious stuff for ages. I absolutely loathed school and pretended to be ill as often as physically possible, and was at home all that time watching television. Any television, which of course meant school's television. So I saw much more of it than anybody who was actually at school.
We've got Eastland Burkholder. Persons forget how untamed these shows were back in the day, how it was brave to tackle issues. And yeah, I'm probably getting the backs up of parents. And sometimes it's good to, as we under through this, that you actually, when we get all our knickers in a twist about, you know, whatever's going on in the latest Star Beast episode of Doctor Who, that there were always episodes that got parents irritated and angry about content.
Then I was watching the Baroness.
You just reminded me of something.
In episode 3, there was an attempted rape scene. Yes, Keys of Mariners, the Terror of the Snow, I think it was called. Barbara was in a hut with this great big hulking guy who locked the door and was exceedingly threatening in a most clearly sexual manner, and chased after her, and she fought him off with an iron bar. Until, I mean, this was an attempted rape scene, no question.
Yeah.
Not a word about it anywhere. And strikes you as surprising as well.
No.
I saw it about half an hour ago.
Well, Simon, I thought the same in The Two Doctors when Fraser Hines, dressed in some cloak, attacked Perry in that all that wiring. I thought, what's going on there?
Oh,
Looked as though he looked as though he's humping a leg.
Dodgy.
I thought, what's going on here? I mean, it's just,
that just looked like it. This was scripted to be
okay.
it. And it was, what, late 60s?
Does anyone here? We've got a question from our thread here. Frankenstein says, "Does anyone remember a trippy, British science fiction series from the 70s about an alien with blonde hair and blue eyes called Sky?" It's hard, isn't it? Sometimes there's so many shows that come and go. But yeah, we'll have a think. We'll rack our brains as we go through. Stephen Braddock.
Maybe someone in the thread knows.
We used to watch How We Used to Live and then have an exercise book where we wrote down what we'd just seen. Stephen, did we have the same teacher? Were you sat next to me? Because honestly, that just feels like that. Do you know what? Having been a teacher, I sometimes think, what a getaway they had. Gee me. You watch a program for half an hour, the kids sit still in the 70s. Then after the program, right, sit and write in what you've just watched. What? So there's an hour. Wow, what a day. No, and they got paid comparatively more than we did. I tell you what, unbelievable. Now, there's all good old Bernard Cribbins. Now, there's a division here, aren't there? There's the programs that were made for kids, you know, TV for kids, and then there was TV that kids would just sneakily watch and actually love. So, for example, I loved Crown Court. And Crown Court was obviously on ITV and it wasn't made for kids. But if it was a day off school because I was sick or something and dad or mum was watching it, we watched Crown Court. I loved Pebble Mill at 1. I mean, I was 5. Yeah. I was 5 and I loved Pebble Mill at 1. It's like... And
the thing about teachers trying to make life easier for them, my class, there were 40 people in it. I don't know how many were in the classes you taught, Brendan, but the classes I taught, there are only about 20.
How old?
So, yeah.
How old were they?
Oh, my lot were foundation students. Well, when I worked with young kids, I was occasionally in a class of 1.
Yeah, I you know, a class of 30, 18-year-olds might be tasty, or 16-year-olds. Can be, especially if they don't like English.
Oh yes, oh yes.
Let's kind of let's pull to this one, lads. Now, everybody in the thread. Here's my big first question here. It's a funny old question when we talk about TV, but yes, I am going to go there, and here it is. Does anybody remember that? Look, you know the rules in your house, and your mum or your dad, it was one of them designated, would say, right, it's time for bed. You want to get washed, you want to get ready, you need to get your pajamas on. Sometimes it was a scaled development.
Yeah.
And if you remember that, I'm asking now, everybody, did you develop any sneaky bad habits to delay the inevitable, delay going to bed? Because I think because I'm a creature of the 70s, when TV was really hitting its peak, that we really learned every little trick in the book. So me and my brother would work in a partnership. If mum and dad said we could have supper, we'd stagger the supper so that there was always one still making it. So, well, one can't go to the bed if the other one's still eating. Not allowed that. And of course, so then we'd sneakily get to see the start of Hawaii 5-0, or get to see the start of The Professionals, or get to see the start of a show at 9 o'clock. And then if it was dad on his own, dad was vulnerable. So what would happen is we would say to him, Dad, we've just watched the start of Hawaii 5-0. Can we just see what happens next? Oh, yeah, go on then. So that takes you to 10. Yep.
That was my trick. That was my trick, and it always worked. If you get to the first 15 minutes, you can usually maneuver it to the end. But negotiation.
Yes. Well, blackmail
programs didn't have advert breaks.
Yeah, well, we did blackmail as well because not but we'd say because because Dad would accidentally give away that. Yes, Dad
I'm going to tell Mum what you did.
Give away a dangerous tactic because he'd say, "Don't tell your mum," and we'd go, "Oh, okay." Oh,
Oh,
so action
never say
podcast.
those
Ouch, my
words.
leg hurts. Growing pains. Always got me another half an hour. Yeah.
I never had those.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Well, I don't think he did either.
No.
Frankenstein.
And I could watch late programs when my father was working late until whatever, making television programs. That was another trick. So when he wasn't there, my mother and I could watch Monty Python, which wasn't possible if he was there because he didn't like it. But when he came back and told us what programs he'd been working on, then I could say, oh, I've got to watch that. And so, I'd see I, Claudius and Churchill's People and the Henry VIII series, all of those things he did. So I was a different sort of television viewer.
Yeah, there's different things. It's like, right, me and my brother are similar age. So one is sent to quickly in the break get changed into your pajamas because they're staggered it, get from your clothes to your pajamas, then you can sit and watch a bit more telly, then you can have a bit of supper, and you just you learned that, oh right, okay then, well the toast took a while, oh dear, and then I can't find the right pajamas, oh dear, you just just milk it for an hour.
Or just move really slowly. I used to get into my pajamas so slowly. It would drive them crazy. They gave up in the end.
Well, good to see Daz Blue here. I know we find new people all the time. I remember a show as a kid where they made a rocket in a scrapyard. The capsule was the drum of a lorry cement mixer. Seen nothing about it since.
Salvage 1. Andy Griffith.
Now
really
Daz
good.
Blue's onto one here. I think we're opening up a whole can of worms here. He remembers, Pebble Mill. The Sullivans used to be on at dinner time. Yes, my dad loved the Sullivans. Mum hated it. Classic. You watch your mum and dad fight over the button.
Terrible show.
Stephen Braddock. The scariest children's TV series ever was The Changes. It terrified me as a kid and was an intense drama for a kid's show. Therefore, you watched it, Stephen. Daz Blue is remembering all these programs. Words and Pictures, Schools and Colleges. Yeah, I know. There was some with Itsy and Bitsy. There was some with this strange little fan of word thing. He was an orange kind of black hole droid. They have all the tricks to get kids to go, oh, this English is interesting if you have a strange bot. Lee Smith. Now look at this. I remember watching the first half of Barbarella as a kid. We'd had to go to bed and miss the second half. Took me years to see the rest. It was the sexiest thing I'd ever seen.
The first bit was the best anyway. The first bit was the best.
Yeah, well, this is what I mean. There's TV for kids and then there's TV not for kids, but the kids make sure they see it. Yeah.
Not for kids.
And here's one. Here's one. Stephen Braddock. When our uncle babysat, we could watch everything from Dave Allen up to the late night Hammer Hill. Yeah. Well, and this is it. My gran let us, and I know we're talking TV, but when we stayed at our gran's, she had, it seemed to be as two little kids that we thought she had the biggest double bed in history. It was enormous. Anyway, so you'd get in the double bed with her at night, and she'd put the black and white portable on, and we watched horrific stuff. We watched, I don't know if it is that movie, The Baby Jane, and the head bounces down the stairs. I remember,
I think it is. Yeah.
And I think, yes, relatives not called your mum and dad. TV was a different feast.
So
I watched an alleged comedy film with my grandmother, who was sort of watching it, and it had a robot in it, and it was a female robot who went wrong, and she smoked a cigarette, and the cigarette smoke came out of her ears, and that I sort of vaguely thought it was sort of frightening, frankly. This was 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
I think I remember
I had
that.
nightmares for a decade, literally, about robots that looked like humans that could.
I think that was Julie Newmar, My Living Doll. It was a really short-lived series.
This was a film, a black and white. Yeah.
Oh,
And by
okay.
black and white, I mean it actually was black and white rather than our telly was, because we got colour in 1967.
So, were there any other
Oh,
delaying
wow.
mechanisms anyone can think of, or any special programs that you thought, no, this is the one we want to stay up for? I mean,
Monty Python.
yeah, I mean,
The Avengers.
so, and of course, what were your tactics and all the rest of it? That was the question. So, you know, that was that. So, as everyone's pondering, the other thing I want to ask now, because this is about, and I've mentioned Grange Hill, that there's things and sometimes content that your mum and dad aren't aware of, and then they're probably sitting there going, "Oh, I'm not sure I really want my kids seeing this." Now, here we go. I'll ask you the question. So, as you know, with my Carry On themes, there seems to have been a movie on nearly every topic. So now I've called it Carry On Constable. I want you thinking of lots of crime series, TV crime series, police series, crime series. But the point I'm asking is, of course, did it teach us bad habits, good habits? So, for example, The Sweeney, which I never watched, I heard from the bed. I could hear the music, I could hear the swearing, I could hear the fighting and the car chases, but I heard it all from my pillow. So it's an interesting one, lads, that I'm trying to conflate two things here at the same time. One is, can anyone remember any TV programs that they only ever heard or watched actually from bed? And I don't mean you had a portable in your bedroom. I mean, you kind of think you know the program because your mum or dad watched it every week. But the other thing is, as I'm asking, what were your key crime programs as a parent or as a kid teaching you good or bad habits? Because to me, the Sweeney taught me swearing, and the Sweeney taught me, whoa, gosh, that was rough. Any thoughts, Doug?
So many.
Good.
My cop shows were kind of my favorite. I mean, there was Columbo, Banachek was a great one, Macmillan and Wife, Starsky and Hutch. As far as habits, I think the worst habit these shows taught me was my fashion sense. That Starsky and I don't know if this was the same in Britain, but Starsky and Hutch, and he only ever wore this once, was this big cardigan, and they were a fashion. Yeah. They became a fashion trend in the 70s. It was a giant, oversized cardigan, and I would wear it everywhere. It was called the Starsky jacket. We called it the Star, but apparently the guy only wore it once, but it just caught on. So I think it was my. I think the 70s was sort of the decade that fashion forgot, really. But I loved it. That jacket and the flares and the sneakers that they used to wear. I think they were called Rome sneakers. They had the white sneakers with blue stripes.
This blurs into a few things. I made a fair bit of notes on this. When you talk about Starsky and Hutch, and I mentioned the Sweeney earlier, this is one of the things actually, because
you got all muffled.
As a little kid, I was learning. As a little kid,
no, you're good.
I'll keep going.
No, you're good.
As a little kid, it's hard to do it. I know. God, it is like being in the classroom. As a little kid,
we've done that bit. We've done that bit. Go on.
I keep getting interrupted.
Come on, Kara. Skip to the end. Skip to the
end. As
a
little kid with Sweeney and with Starsky and Hutch, you were seeing New York. You were seeing elements of America in Starsky and Hutch's case. You were seeing black representation. I mean, Huggy Bear was an interesting introduction for us of being a Middlesbrough kid. Huggy Bear. And I do sometimes wonder, because I have mentioned Huggy Bear a few times, and I mentioned in relation to what was going on with Shooty Gatwa, maybe with RTD. And I just thought, Huggy Bear was a bit of a pimp, wasn't he?
He was. They softened the character towards the end, but initially, yes, he was.
And you know, I'm a kid watching Starsky and Hutch. Number one, there's all the American versions of things. You're learning, and that's always interesting, isn't it? I mean, American.
So did you ask your dad questions like, what's a pimp, Daddy?
It just looked as though they were in a snooker pool place, didn't it? So to us, it was the sport bit. You know, I mean, there was a bar.
Huggy Bears, Huggy Bears bar,
we were innocent enough to just go that, but it was just that there was something about him that you realise right under our noses there was a little bit more going on there. And, you know, I wonder if parents are in a cold sweat sometimes going, oh, God, should we be letting them watch Starsky and Hutch?
I
think
came
mine
across
were.
Huggy Bear once, but I was working in the post office as a training technician apprentice, and there was a black guy who had dressed up as Huggy Bear. I hadn't got any idea what they were talking about. And he was like, "Go on, say hello to Huggy Bear. Go on, say hello." And this bloke walked across, and I thought, "That's worrying. That's very disturbing sight." Looking like that. And it was only about 20 years later I figured out what on earth they were talking about. And
Well,
so
of course,
they had learned something. And
well, of course, the other thing is copying, isn't it? And of course,
Oh,
we
yeah.
all wanted the Starsky and
Yeah,
Hutch
big
car,
time.
the little car with the white
Oh, yeah.
dash. Now we've got lots of
Yeah,
now
the
we've got lots of
stripe, yeah.
questions here. Daz Blue, for example, at school in the mid 80s, similar to me, it was similar age at Musby. We had a video club. Yeah, we did too. Adrian Lappin, who was the house captain, somehow had some relationship with our chief gaffer nun, Sister Claire. She was the head. She was like a Dennis Norden with a veil. So she'd walk around. She always walked around with this clipboard and veil, and she was very tall. So she was intimidating Dennis Norden with a veil. Just imagine it.
Madam
And
Vesta.
yeah, so there's Sister Claire, and he negotiated with Sister Claire to get us in our secondary school a video club. And then oh my gosh, it went crazy when everybody found out that he was actually hiring Lemon Popsicle and Animal House. And all of a sudden, all these nuns were
What
going,
the hell?
well, they called it soft porn. It's like, so I remember this as you've made me think.
Oh,
Me and my
wow.
mate went one week and they said, hands up if you're not in 5th year. We did, but the teacher didn't see us. So we watched The Life of Brian.
Oh, that's
Very nice.
Oh, nice.
Oh yeah, never be truthful, I think, is
Very
what we're
nice.
learning here.
Yes, it did teach me how to lie, television. I must be honest. That was one of the
Now,
bad
that's
things.
rude.
Or
You
maybe
might
good
have-
a
things.
video club at our
Taught me was
school.
to lie well.
So me and my friends ran the film club, where we projected films that we had hired in the main body of the hall onto our massive screen. It was marvelous. It was proper protected and everything. Yeah.
Wow.
Duplex changeovers. Oh yes, we could do it. There you go. That's how you start in television.
Well, Daz Blue, you should maybe write to us and come on as a panelist because you seem to have a lot of good memories here. What about Petrocelli? What about
I remember that.
Petrocelli? Now, as he
It was a
says
good
here,
show, yeah.
did he ever finish that house? Which
Was it Barry
has
Newman
just
or
made
something?
me think. Yes, all I remember is either in the opening sequence or for every part of the story. It's like TJ Hooker. They were always running around the block at the beginning, weren't they? You always
Rolling over the car, the TJ Hooker car roll over the hood of the car.
they always had the recruits at the
stuntman.
beginning. There was always this stock footage of some police recruits running around at the beginning.
Well,
Yeah.
Petrocelli, their legs on the
Yeah, I
bits
love
of
TJ
front, on
Hooker.
the front of the cars where they screwed across them. That always confused me when I saw the trailers.
So yes, maybe Petrocelli never finished the house because they never finished the series. Maybe Stephen Braddock. The ones I remember was Dixon and Zed Cars and Softly Softly, which I could watch, but never the Sweeney until I was old enough to understand. But could hear the swearing and car chases downstairs. So Stephen, we've got a similar childhood. Did you? It sounded so. I think some TV programs were better from the pillow. You could hear them and you thought, "Wow!" And you really were trying to stay awake and listening through the mattress, through the floorboards.
Oh, you should have used the technology I did. I had extended the loudspeakers of my father's hi-fi system downstairs up to my room. And then I realized that if I listened carefully, the sound in the sitting room bounced onto the loudspeaker, and which worked as a microphone and sent the signal back upstairs to my loudspeaker, and I could hear the telly over a loudspeaker.
Oh
I heard
God.
softly that way. It's marvelous.
Wow.
I mean, yeah. I have to say that there was a lovely sense of community. Juliet Bravo and various crime shows like that. It was nice because it was set in a kind of not a village quite, was it? But it was lovely. It was like there was a kind of community. It was a bit heartbeatish, I suppose. Juliet Bravo, and you know, you got that sense of people looked out for each other a little bit. There was always the nosy one with the twitching curtains and stuff. I think now Stephen
Lollipop.
Braddock. I remember when my parents said, "Right, you can watch a Starsky and Hutch, and it turned out to be an episode about Hutch being spiked with drugs and going through cold turkey.
Oh, I saw that one. Yeah.
Now you see, this is the problem. We see
very, very heavy.
We see this
very
is it, isn't
episode.
it? About good habits, bad habits, and the ugly. Okay. The parents understand what Starsky and Hutch is, and then they go, "Yeah, you can stay up." But there's no trigger warning in the corner. You know, this obsession in 2025 is everything that's old has to have a trigger warning, and yet,
don't get me started.
At the time, the parents will have
the circumstances of the day.
Whereas the parents would have had to have made a decision, which is to get off their backsides, walk over to telly, and press a button to change channel. No, so therefore they would have had to have openly in front of you say, or they'd tell the kids to turn over, and you're going, "Oh, Dad, oh no, turn over now." You did. You didn't answer back, really. You just got on with it. I don't know. There's some great ones here. I'm seeing all the lists of people. BJ and the Bear, the Bionic Man, Planet of the Apes TV show, which I thought scared me to death. Macmillan and Wife, I loved Macmillan and Wife.
Oh, I love that
Don't
show.
think it taught me anything. They just looked like a nice, happily married couple as in the program. You know, look, it was a nice program to watch.
Yeah, it's a very good show.
Educational.
Well, sorry?
Time
Tunnel was good. It was good fun, and he's gone.
Yeah,
he's
I'm
gone
back
back
again.
in time.
There we go.
He's back again.
Time Tunnel. Well,
Time
they kept
Tunnel was
going
very
into historical situations and finding out stuff like Troy, which of course Doctor Who did, which was rather fun, I thought.
Well,
remember it.
Well, this is the trip. You've got Quantum Leap. You've got certain stories that. The trouble is, it's who owns the material. So if an American show jumps into British history, we know that they will skew it. You know, like who discovered the Enigma code? Well, according to the movies, it was America. Right, okay. You know, we know it could get changed. One program I have to say, and it was a bit more educational, but it made education fun. And this man should have won awards. Johnny Ball, if anybody in Britain in the 80s knows, think of a number and all those. This man, Zoe Ball's dad, as you know, he made maths trendy. He made it.
I know Zoe Ball.
No,
this guy.
He's the gaffer. He was on Play School, but he was also, he did comedy. Wow. But he was able to structure a show on maths and make it really interesting. He's got charisma. He's very creative, and you know, he should have been a teacher, a super teacher, if you get my gist.
Oh, I think he was, because he was on telly doing his thing, and millions of people were watching him. I worked on his shows too, by the way.
But he was very creative. He's very good, and that, you know, that was on at tea time, so it was set for children. But I bet you loads of parents watched it and learned a lot about maths.
And a few adults did too.
Yeah. I mean, I still think Jamie's obsession with clocks. Jamie's obsession with clocks. He loves to see the whole, the machinery going on inside, and I think it comes from when we all used to stare at the Play School clock, and you saw the cogs, and you used to love to see the display on the top. I do think some things tap so deep into you that you can't leave it.
Oh, definitely. No, definitely.
I mean, Jamie's really into watches, and that is one thing. And so, of course, I just want to mention a few things, folks, in the thread and to you two lads, just to kind of prompt some certain memories about habits or good routines or bad routines. So, for example, in Britain, we had the record breakers. So basically,
yes.
The geek side of you could be fed, and you learned that was okay, you know, because kids love to know the longest, the shortest, the fattest. They love all that. The news round. I mean, John Craven came up with a news show for kids. He simplified it and explained it better. You know, if he was on now, he'd explain the Gaza situation, and he'd do it in a minute.
Oh, yes.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. So if everybody remembers that. Blockbusters. Now, there were certain shows. Remember, 70s and 80s, it's still newish TV, and it was when everybody was still using it. And Blockbusters, when we were coming back from school, you'd pop in to my grand's and we'd watch Blockbusters. And then, of course, you learnt, you know, the quiz element, and you know, it made it trendy to know stuff. But one of mine, I remember, I mean, you've got Clapperboard with Chris Kelly, which was, you know, the behind the scenes of TV. Swap Shop, when you learned this interactive process with a TV presenter. Everybody of my age knows that phone number. Everybody. And everybody... Do you know what? Us 70s kids learned not to think you're going to get a brand new toy. Swap Shop, as we know, for 3 hours, you said, can I get rid of my tatty rubbish toy and swap it for something else? And the whole program was built on swapping recycled second-hand toys.
I know, jolly good idea it was too.
It's a great concept.
I mean, but isn't it fascinating? You know, the 70s was this evil, racist, sexist time, and yet a lot of us were taught not to always demand brand new, and actually swapping and recycling was a good thing 50 years ago.
As people got richer, though, they became less and less desirous of second-hand something. Oh, I'm not going to touch that. That's second-hand. Yes, exactly. Very sad.
Yeah, so everybody can tell you about Posh Paws. Everybody can tell you about the ducks everywhere and all the rest of it. Now, it was just mentioned in the thread, Screen Test was another one. It was a bit like Blockbusters, but obviously on the BBC with that amazing marching music and Michael Rodd. Screen Test, where it was like the Krypton factor for kids. You had to kind of watch some excerpts of movies, and you had to memorize, and you had to know your stuff and be very observant. This was good TV, I think. It was teaching kids memory. It was teaching kids to be critical thinkers. This sort of thing, I think, worked. So hopefully I'm kind of making everybody remember things in the thread, and then I'll come to you. So, for example, Lee Smith, Screen Test show kids stop motion animation film.
Which turned into Wallace and Gromit.
Yeah. Well, and Take Heart.
Absolutely, via Take Heart.
Blockbusters, I loved that. Reese Roder, Eastland Burkholder, loved the Rockford Files. Yeah, my dad loved it. I think
James
Eastland,
Garner.
that's funny because that's one of the shows I only ever watched from my pillow because my dad was playing it. I could hear it.
The theme tune.
And he would say, I think I'm getting somewhere close to learning what happened because someone tried to kill me, beat me up, drive my car off the road. Good life lesson.
Don't drive the car.
Stephen Braddock used to love Record Breakers. Good old Roy Castle. One series spot called America showed us all the cities and customs, and that was back then the only way to see these US cities. And that's the other thing about TV then. You were going to place. I mean, I never thought I'd even see America, and to see Kojak and Cagney and Lacey and Streets of San Francisco and all the rest of it.
Calais.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then when the television came on and said, yes, we can just about see it's over there, and then swirling pictures, and there it was, Calais. It was magic.
Now, Graham Dawson might be hitting you two a bit better than me here. Public Eye, Department.
Department S, yes. Jason.
But what is he saying? Because that makes no sense to me. So what did you learn from that? What was that about? You know, like.
I don't know.
So what about the one you said?
That was a sort of a documentary thing, I think. But I never saw it, so I don't know.
Well, Frankenstein is reminding us the Tamura people. How can I forget Dudley Simpson's music and the Tamura people, which told us that in hippie times we're all weird because they're all a bit supernatural and weird.
Great thing is, I missed all of this ITV stuff. I've now got a chance on ITVX and the internet national saving things that are a Wayback Machine. I can watch them and skip through the adverts. Marvelous.
Well, this is it, and we're trying to attach memories, bad habits, good habits. Did it work? Because they were all fearful in those days that television was this dangerous thing. I remember it introduced me to so many classics. The Phoenix and the Carpet, The Secret Garden. Does anyone in the thread remember other classics that were made for children? And I can vividly see that Phoenix and terrible CSI of the magic carpet flying, but who cared? And that girl with a posh accent who was always seems to be ill in the secret garden. Remember it well throughout all its repeats. Now, you see, there's TV working well. Sometimes you don't read the book. You know, Secret Garden always looked like a girl's book to me as a boy, but I watched it. So therefore, yeah, you know what I mean? You get a double whammy.
Yeah, we read it in school. I didn't like it, but I've seen a few really good adaptations.
CSO was extremely difficult to set up and could only be done in studio time. You couldn't rehearse it. You had to have the cameras, you had to have the real things there. And if the clipper didn't clip, tough. You had to take what you got.
Well, you've got Eastland Burkholder here to the Secret Garden. I suppose I just remember TV was repeated a lot in a way. I don't know how many times I saw that. Belle and Sebastian. I don't know how many times I watched Belle and Sebastian in the summer holidays.
It's not film, you could repeat that. Yeah.
But Michael Bentine's Potty Time, which what did it teach me? Because I was older then, and of course it just had these very. It was what was so interesting when I see Potty's Time now, because I've got the DVD, is Michael Bentine looking as though he's going to a defense social club. In, you know, I don't think he was wearing a military tie and everything and his military blazer. And, you know, when you listen to these people, everybody had a certain RP accent. And it's all.
There's nothing wrong with that.
And the way he talked to these little.
Oh, I think there is.
But the way he talked to these potties was amazing. And of course, he always has a big one and always a little one. And of course, kids love that. And of course, all you got was like a sandscape and lots of explosions in the sand. And him doing all the sound effects. Yeah, fantastic. To be honest, it taught you a lot of creativity. I mean, just watching Potty Time, you thought it's really just one quick set. He stood behind it and you watch some quick effects and some great voices.
And none of them were special effects. They were all actual effects.
So you've got stuff like the Krypton Factor. You've got, you know, you've all got your different versions in different countries where, of course, the only thing on the Krypton Factor I remember really distinctly was there was an observation round and I remember the assault course. And people broke legs and everything. I mean, I think what I learned in life is don't go on the Krypton Factor. Go on Mastermind, sit in the chair, you won't die. But go on the Krypton Factor, you might lose your leg.
Yes, definitely.
Well, that's more like it. I think TV taught me more bad habits than good ones. I remember watching as a kid, it must have been a repeat, Ivanhoe. And my friends and I decided that we'd go jousting, so we used our bicycles and broomsticks, and that didn't end well for anybody.
Well, how many people broke their legs or broke their back, sadly, copying the Bionic Man? Because you watch Steve Austin or, of course, the Bionic Woman jump in slow motion, and then it's this, and we all impersonated it at school. We all did the.
I used to jump off the roof into the swimming pool. I'm lucky I wasn't a paraplegic because the swimming pool was only 3 foot.
This is it because that.
So,
but this is it because the slow motion effect softens what it looks like, and I remember the same. I was a bit older, but I remember them saying the same about the mighty Power Rangers. That kids were breaking their legs and stuff like that because they were doing what the Power Rangers did.
Yeah, my son was the right age for that, and that's exactly right. They got up to crazy
stuff. So you see, sometimes you think, well, should there be no-go zones for television?
We're talking about
censorship, but you know that kid in a wheelchair. You know, you think, oh, is that just a shame? You know, kids copy. This is where I started the program. Kids do copy. The kid who got slippered.
Absolutely.
The kid who got slippered at school because he wrote the Fonz is cool. Now, you know, he was taught that by Happy Days. I mean, you know, language. I mean, some of the language. I mean, you know, in the 70s and 80s, some of your parents might really tell you off for using an Americanism because it's seen as slang.
My mother told me not to use my playground voice at home.
And look, it didn't work because now you sound rough as. I mean, honestly.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
Sounds
I know.
very Cockney, doesn't he?
I've got this bloke, you see. I know this. He's a builder. He does stuff. You know, he's one of my.
He's dropped the facade now. It's the real Simon we're hearing
but
now.
His neighbours hate him. He's rough as.
Yeah, I bet they do. He's a slag.
Daz Blue, about 30.
He's a muppet.
My dad let me watch Off Reader St. Pet on telly. Still one of the best TV shows. And do you know what, Daz Blue? I loved Off Reader St. Pet, and I'm not a Geordie, but yes, it's getting closer.
Very, very good.
But the point was, and it was great comedy, and actually it was a really good story about Norman Tebbit, one of our Tory politicians, said, get on your bike. Yeah, you know, he basically was telling the Northerners that because you didn't live near London, shut your face and learn to just kind of, you know, tip you. It was disgraceful. I have to say, some of what the Tories said in the 80s was disgraceful.
But it was on your bike and cycle to somewhere where there was work.
Yeah, but Mrs. Thatcher had shut Middlesbrough down. Do you know what I mean? You know, it just so happened that the Prime Minister shut most of our industry and coal mines, and then everybody was telling us to get on our bike and go 200 miles south. Very nice if you can get it. Meanwhile, some of my friends would get jobs in the BBC because they lived around the corner and could do free voluntary work. Yeah, very nice.
I made a graph last night up of
right, well, he's coming and going, but
there we are. Yeah, and during the Thatcher period, which is in the middle, you see the amount of educational output from the BBC and ITV dropped dramatically during the Thatcher period. But notice the line going up there on that one. See there, the dotted line, the grey one, rising. That is the actual educational attainment, which has been rising steadily. Now, I wonder if it is actually an indication of increased academic ability or just an increased ability to pass exams.
Well, haven't been a teacher. Unfortunately, it's got too cynical. They're taught to teach to pass exams.
Precisely. Yes, I had to teach my students two things: one, how to pass exams; the other, how to do the job.
So what we've got here is perceived political bias of BBC versus ITV. And you can see the 80s where what Tories were saying, it was seen as not biased towards the Tories, or is that a negative? That
the ITV was right wing and and BBC was left wing perceived. Yes, but when the Labour Party was in power, it was exactly the opposite.
There was an issue where, I mean, I think the Tories wanted to finish all those public information films, and that's my childhood learning about, you know, don't go on railway lines, don't do this, don't do that. I mean, it was the whole kip and caboodle, really. But it was just, I do remember Off Reader St. Pet, coming back to that, which was, it was just ironic because Norman Tebbit had to get on your bike. Well, they got on a ferry and went to Germany, basically, from Newcastle. I mean, hello. So marriage is dead in the water. You can't have family life when you live abroad. So thank you, Conservative government. That made sense when you could have been in a coal mine around the corner, or you could have been working at British Steel just around the corner. But yeah, they wanted to put all their investment into London and make London a super city and make the rest of us all paupers.
She pretended that it was an environmental action as well, which I think is basically greenwashing.
Don't talk to me about coal mines. I grew up in a coal mining village in Wales.
You see, but this is it. And it's
where thing to do, but done very, very badly.
Yeah, but this is where Off Reader St. Pet does play into that, because the story is they got on their bike and they had an adventure in Europe, basically, is the essence of it. Some had affairs, some the marriage collapsed. You know, it was quite realistic. What I was always shocked by, and this is just on a was I've forgotten his name, you know, the Jimmy Nail character, walking around in what looked like really dirty undies. And I remember going, what is... I just remember being a teenager, and it was really challenging to go, oh my God, is this? It almost put me off thinking if I did work with a group of lads, this looks gross. Do you know what I mean? It's
It
challenging.
taught me not to share guns.
What was the deal with Jimmy Nail? I never understood that Jimmy. He was briefly a pop star, wasn't he, Jimmy Nail? I never understood that. Yeah.
Well,
what the hell?
I mean, he crocodile shoes as well. He did.
Do you remember the shake hands bloke? Because that was a thing in school. If somebody's asked you to shake hands, you're going to get your hand crushed. And that was one of the characters who just sort of looked at you and, as a threat, said, "Shake hands." That was. You don't remember? Oh, no, I do.
Currently, we're watching The Water Margin on DVD. It was the first to be dubbed into English by the same BBC team that dubbed Monkey. There's so much out there. It's very, very hard to even kind of follow. Yeah,
I'm not familiar with that.
Great stuff. Yes,
and
Monkey, marvelous. Yes, yeah.
Monkey's great. Yeah, Monkey's great. Very big in Australia.
The original translation, they're very good as well.
A bit of love from on Jimmy Nail and good old.
Nobody remember Shake Hands?
No, no.
No.
I mean,
oh God.
I think you're making it up. I think you just made it up.
The other thing is, and we did touch on this in one of our talking TVs before, and I thought, well, it's more of an item actually, which is when I'm talking about what did TV teach us for good or bad. Look, whether you're religious or not, I thought Jesus of Nazareth in the 70s was must-watch TV, and rather than
Robert Powell,
you know, I mean, we went to Sunday school for a few years when we were little, and it doesn't work. Bible studies, boring, but oh my God, you make a really good, and God, the stars in that cast, and you know, Robert Powell.
It's a good story. It's a good story.
It's a good story, and it was well made. And you know, you had Olivia Hussey as Mary, a young-looking Mary, and brilliant. You know, you could see the whole thing, the Romans, Herod, the lot, and it's so powerful. The music's powerful, and the destruction of Jesus in that mini-series was really big. Now, the margin, I call them the margin now because sometimes my brain goes backwards. Yeah,
it's the thread.
You've mentioned
you call it the thread.
There's Joseph and Mary. Actually,
entirely made of plastic.
And then, of course, Roots as Thread Arsene. Now, yeah. Well, this was, I mean, they'd call it, was it a mini series or bestsellers? They used to call them.
I think it was one of the first mini series, and it really just took off.
It did, and we were talking about. I mean, you don't have to teach me one page about the slave trade as a kid. You showed me the roots, and I got it. It's stuck in my brain. It'll stay in my brain till my dying day. And out of the
good story told well, good story told well, just like Doctor Who used to be.
And everything.
It was,
and it was a clever idea in the way that if you're going to teach about this, start with a young lad taken away from his family in West Africa, scared out of his wits, beaten, assaulted, endangered, enslaved, the horrific journey over, him realizing he's on his own, and then building a new life in a new place. The whole thing is phenomenal.
It was a great cast too. Lots of big stars that were in small roles, wasn't it? It was a bit of a gimmick, but the main cast was it LeVar Burton? I think the guy that went on Star Trek. He was amazing.
Yes. Fantastic.
Well, Lee Smith, big impact on me. I have to say, and isn't that the point? And that's when something is educational, although it was probably not meant to be. It's a bestseller. It's a book, and then they make it into a bestseller for TV. And let's face it, these companies on TV are just trying to make money. And if the story though is applied well, because it's a brilliant character, and it's sadly it is I say it's a brilliant story, but you know what I mean. It's a very interesting story.
No, Just a good story told well, but they did it so well because it was a commercial success. It was also educational. It was also impactful on society. It succeeded in so many ways.
History.
I mean,
I don't think there's any revisionism in there. I think it was showing it up.
I don't feel there was.
The thing is, there's some decisions to be made. This was Saturday night TV in the 70s, and I think I'm borderline 8, 9 years old, and that's why this is on the. I'm on the cusp, and that was probably above my age range, and it really did get you. And this is, I said it before, and I'm going to say it again. This nonsense about representation. Who in that cast represented me? But of course, I understood it.
Too.
No, but that's my point. And clearly, I was engaged by it. And this nonsense nowadays, that it's all about how you look, and whatever your exterior looks like has to be judged and checked. Oh, no. And that's why we've got in a pickle with Doctor Who, because the people making the program have completely lost the plot regarding what makes a good story.
Absolutely. I think we discussed this before. Absolutely. I mean, it's a good story. I've said this before. If I watch a show, I don't have to see myself in it. That's not necessary. I just need to enjoy it and appreciate it. By the way, that Roots logo is fantastic. Speaking as a designer, that's brilliant. But yeah, you don't have to see yourself in these things. They just need to be stories told well. Exactly what you're saying. Doctor Who lost the plot.
Yeah, because you know, RTD's a few years older than me, and he'll have known all these. These are all fixtures in our childhood as we go through our television childhood. So he will know Roots very well. Now, I know in season 2, there's a story apparently where they're either all ethnic in cast, written by, I think it's
Doctor Who season 2. You're talking,
yeah, and so maybe there's going to be a story where we just get a switch in viewpoint. Now, you know, here's the template. Admittedly, it was over 6 or 8 episodes, but the point is, but hello, RTD, you don't have to do one-off episodes. You could actually be, you know, if it's an important story, make it an important story.
Oh yes, that's exactly what I've been saying. Just make it one long story done well.
Writing with good characterization. I mean,
yes,
I was watching He's a Baroness today. He's really well written, cleverly thought out. The characters are all different. They're unexpected behaviors from groups, and then the traditional, oh, they're going to be a baddie, oh, and they're not, and that's and it's.
You just nailed it there, Simon. Unexpected, surprise us. Yes, good writing and surprise us.
Now,
That's just what we need.
Roots. Let's be honest. There were kids watching that. There was no trigger warning. There was no nonsense saying, oh, if this is a safe space or not. And to be honest, program makers need to get a life, and they need to grow a pair, because they should remember their childhood. Roots might have surprised us. It might have surprised our parents and shocked our parents, thinking, oh my God, our 2 kids are watching this. I don't know if this is a bit too adult. But we got through it. It's stuck in our it's hardwired into our brain, and hopefully it's made us more decent people. And surely that's TV off the scale. And all this sort of nonsense about safe spaces, trigger warnings, if you want to avoid this. It's program makers trying to do a nanny state, do it badly, do it wrongly, and they're forgetting their own blooming childhood.
The chap who was talking about revisionism that I took it out. I can take the point. I don't remember there being a nice white guy in Roots. There might have been. I don't remember it.
Yes,
That's a very good point. Yeah. That's a very good point. No,
but
I don't think there was.
In reality, I'm sure, I mean, this happened, no question, but I'm sure there were situations where there were fairly reasonable sort of white landowners and so forth, because there was a lot of intermarriage and acceptance of the offspring. So there must have been something not entirely 100% awful. And it wasn't just the whites, it had been all the nasties either. But, I mean, that wasn't shown in Roots as far as I remember. So,
put it this way, it's not what... as a kid, it's not what I took from it. I took the story of Kunta Kinte.
Yeah.
He was the main act. He was the main character. He didn't go all the way through because obviously he ended up dying and his family continued. But I always got upset as a kid when I saw his descendants go, "We're going to tell you the story of Kunta Kinte," and that it really, really imbued in me a sense of family from even when people have died. Unbelievable, the power of that on genealogy, family history, the lot. I think the treatment of Kunta Kinte when he was kidnapped and enslaved, and then the story of the family legacy, those two things have lived with me all my life.
Yep.
Other bits I may have missed, but you don't get everything. And I've learnt my lesson, haven't we, lads?
No.
Sometimes don't get the DVD and don't watch it again now.
I was just going to say that, yeah. Yes.
No, yeah, don't go back sometimes.
I'm enjoying going back over the old Doctor Who's. That, as I've pointed out several times, I'm greatly enjoying it. It's well worth it. And Ian Levine's reconstructions, marvellous. In the stories there, you got the whole plot there. I mean, some of the pictures are a bit odd from time to time, but blooming heck, it's worth it. Really. So, there are things that you go back and from a different perspective, something you loved as a child is spoiled. Maybe
but the other thing, I mean, I've put an
example of that.
I've put two photographs up now, and you might go, "We've gone from roots to this. How have you done this, Brendan?" And the point is this:
How have you done this, Brendan? Roots to Rhoda,
because
Mary Tyler Moore, I think.
Early 70s, when colour TV had just come in our house, and everything seemed to be yellow and blue, but the Mary Tyler Moore show opening sequence was a rainbow. Beautiful.
Yellow and blue is the color of the black and white filter.
It was.
You put on the telly.
You see that opening sequence, you had orange and yellow. It was a beautiful opening sequence when you were in the early 70s, Mary Tyler Moore. But what it taught me, without me realizing it, is because remember, I was being taught to be a nasty, racist, sexist 70s kid. Remember? Allegedly. And yet I was watching powerful New York women. I was watching.
It was, a groundbreaking series
and
at
people,
the time.
And I'm going to keep saying this. People forget that the 70s and 80s taught us a lot of good stuff. And I'm not going to allow this nonsense revisionism.
Yeah.
It made the future.
Yeah, it was my grand. It was when I was at my grand's and she'd put the Mary Tyler Moore show on. To me, I was so small. It was the colour that grabbed me. And the fact that she seemed to hold her own. And then I really liked the Rhoda character and I watched her and followed her in her sequel. The thing is, Laverne and Shirley, a lot of them are American, of course, but we saw powerful women. We saw it.
You did.
So where does all this sexism come from?
I don't get it. They were in abundance. You had like your Emma Peel and in the Avengers, and
sadly the sexism was in real life, and in wasn't.
Yeah, there you go.
There was just so much nastiness going on that was just accepted as usual, and people didn't notice because it was usual.
But this is.
Behind closed doors.
It was also in public sight and so obvious that it was just ignored because, I mean, that's where you do things.
But this is where, you see, people can't have it both ways. Yes, in workspaces in the 70s, things were happening that shouldn't be happening and wouldn't be allowed. Well, I say wouldn't be allowed now, but whatever. Yeah. So that was the reality of some workspaces. However, the TV programs like these were selling us a better message. And as you know,
the UK programs didn't do this, though. We didn't have a female-centric character on British television, though. It was all American.
They were all American. I get your point. Were we making any ourselves? But we were showing these.
Oh, yes.
You know, we had Juliet Bravo was more 80s.
A long time later.
The end of the 70s was the gentle touch with Jill Gascoigne. Prime Suspect with Helen Mirren was probably very late 70s into the early 80s when.
I was just going to say Prime Suspect, definitely.
Of course, America leads the way here, and we followed that trend. But the point is, as little British kids, we were watching this, yet everybody lazily says the 70s was this terrible, dark time. Well, sorry, the little kids were seeing this. We were watching Roots.
No, it wasn't.
We were watching powerful women on telly, savvy with their mouth. And yes, something might have been happening to our mums and dads in the workplaces, but we were being taught something much better.
And that is why it is better now. I think it is. I think the television really should get the plaudits it deserves for having built the future that is better than the past it was built in.
Except, Simon.
And that's beautifully said. That's beautifully said. That's what TV taught us.
And
well done,
Doug. I think we've gone past that now, where television is too up itself. Television now thinks it's more. When I did the show last night, the 6 o'clock one, we had an article from The Spectator where, of course, the argument was that television producers and writers they really think they're more than they are. They're not Shakespeare.
Yeah.
They're not Prime Minister.
Sure, actually. I'm not so sure. I think some of the stuff written today, it isn't of Shakespearean style, but the overall production quality fills the spot that Shakespeare filled in back in that day.
But the argument in The Spectator was that they think they're more important than they really are. And the point is, if they really do think they're important, like RTD seems to think he's a semi-shufty politician, then he needs to go into politics. Because nobody's voted for his content. No. I mean, if we say we don't like his content, there's nothing we can do about it apart from go and touch grass. So I find it interesting that the 70s and 80s is slagged off a lot TV-wise. And, you know, trigger warnings are bound on repeats. And yet...
there is something you can do about it. You can stand for Parliament yourself, as I have done since 1992.
However, I shouldn't have to stand for Parliament. I should
not.
No, I should hope that the people in power have a brain and common sense and apply it rather than
believe they don't, which is why I do stand.
But rather than they think they are above, they are superior, they are some sort of elite. The producers nowadays sometimes think, and RTD certainly does think, he's something special to preach a message, when actually, no, just make Rhoda. By watching Rhoda, I see a strong, savvy New York woman. Her mother I adored. This little Jewish woman, wasn't she? She didn't take any crap. Loved her. Absolutely a great character actress. I can't remember her name, but she was great. And this is what it was all about. And as Reese Rhoda says, Mork and Mindy, Bewitched. America was leading the way. Different strokes. Now, I don't think it would be.
Policewoman, Angie Dickinson, Policewoman.
Now, Different Strokes is an interesting one that Kez the Drone mentions, because at the time, I think we would have accepted this as kind of pushing the boundaries and is maybe good. Now it wouldn't be seen as good at all, because it was a white foster parent with two black kids, which I don't think is even allowed in fostering now. But yeah, it was interesting. Cat's Eyes, that was 80s. Yeah,
that's the name I couldn't remember. Yeah, it was very good.
Cat Riesel, is Frankenstein telling us Cat Riesel was a woman? No, I'm only kidding. She just didn't share.
A hairy woman.
So, have I got anywhere, lads, regarding, do you think TV has actually had a better impact overall or not? And are we in a better or worse position now?
Does TV still exist?
Well, it does, but it doesn't. As in, you know what I'm saying? People are using the television screen to watch YouTube and other things. So I suppose I'm meaning television as in the BBC, the big agencies, the big producers.
Yeah.
There were so many. I used to be 100% BBC only man. then I slowly realized that people who worked in other programs,
that there was another world.
All the technicians were trained in the BBC and then went and worked in ITV and everywhere else in the world, and which I did as well. I worked at Central Television for a couple of years. It doesn't make any difference. The BBC is a thing, not a group of people. The people can be whoever they are, wherever they are. But the BBC is something bound by its charter, not by the people who make it up. And as such, it hasn't changed. But what it comes out of the screen, well, that's why we're talking about it so much these days. It's just.
It's just that the television, the 70s television generation has grown up, and some of them are lucky enough to be in television, like Russell T Davies is one example. And it's just, unfortunately, they're over-egging it. They're thinking it's much more influential than it should be. And instead of then, this is when the argument is, are they focusing on their message rather than entertaining? If you entertain, now Roots loosely entertained, as it engaged us, it scared us, it was riveting. Yeah, it wasn't entertaining as in it wasn't exactly variety, was it?
No.
But it was gritty, but it taught you so much. If they decided to make Roots now, and I know they've made new versions, but if the whole idea was we're going to teach you about the slave trade, and they came in with an RTD years and years style angle, I think you'd kill it stone dead.
Absolutely, absolutely. TV definitely preaches now, whereas before, you mentioned at one of your earlier shows, it's particularly with science fiction, it's all about allegory. Do it properly. Don't hit us over the head with it. Don't bore us for a start. Don't bore us.
Yeah.
Entertain us.
I mean, how can you make a television program that involves people and not be accused of being soapy about it? Because real life happens slower quite often than television shows need to be.
I mean,
oh, I don't know. I live my real life. I'd rather have TV as an exaggerated version of life, or a fantasy version of life, or an idealized version of life. I've got my life. I don't want to see it on the TV necessarily.
You see, escapism is one thing. Entertainment, engagement, education.
Yeah. But is
educate us subtly, be sneaky, educate us on the sly, entertain us, but also educate. Like Sesame Street. Look what Sesame Street does. All those kids Sesame Street educated over the years and still are. And they use the concept of advertising, TV commercials. And everybody grew up learning through Sesame Street.
I want so much of that.
Very sneaky education. Yeah, it's so sneaky. They entertained you and they also taught you. That's the best way to do it. I never
quite like Sesame Street. But yeah, it takes all sorts. I know we're all different. And we all can...
I personally didn't like it, but my kids loved it, and I know many people who learnt so much through that particular
I just
show.
Wonder, I
was too old for it.
I just wonder if radio, which is still around, but radio's kind of died and waned to a degree. I know you can have podcasts and TV took over. I would just wonder now if television is going to continue to wane. I mean, we might use the TV screens to put DVDs on, to watch a streaming platform, to watch YouTube, to Zoom meetings. You know, we're using a television screen in lots of different ways. I'm just wondering if the power of TV is gone, and it's very...
Do you know, I would have said that. I would have agreed with you, and I know this has been spoken of in other shows, but then you look at things like Wallace and Gromit and Gavin and Stacey. If people do a product that people want to watch, TV could still be alive and well. So I think it could go both ways.
I just find
either way.
Is it going to be a streaming service or is it going to be a broadcast service?
Well, you see, I find it...
Yeah,
I find it interesting that the correlation seems to be that the more the media producers nowadays think they're very important and influential, the less television is having any effect. And when television producers probably just thought they were in a very decent job for the 70s and 80s, but they were just churning out comedy, churning out this, churning out that. Actually, it was very powerful.
And a lot of it was mass produced, and sometimes it was just luck. I just
find it ironic that there may be this crossover, that they really do think there's something now, and yet their ratings are less, their influence is less.
Interesting, though, that one of the biggest rating programs was all about the post office. That was television, and it was ITV, and it was not going to be said that it was going to be anything big, but because it was not only the zeitgeist, but it affected so many people personally.
Well, what about the news? I was nearly going to raise it last night, but the news that it's mooted, that instead of us just paying for each streaming service, our BBC license fee might be part of all that and wrapped up together. That the license fee, you might have to pay a license fee if you get Netflix. You might have to pay a license fee if you pay for any other stream, because they're trying to protect the BBC. I mean, what do you reckon to that? Because you've got the ABC in Australia, so it's the same kind of philosophy, which is,
it's the same philosophy, but we pay through our taxes, so we don't have a license fee as such, but we pay out of our tax. I think you've talked about this before too. I mean, the whole iView thing should be a paid streaming service. That's the way forward, I think, rather than the license fee. As an outsider, I mean,
they'd have to get rid of, in a way, they'd almost have to get rid of the BBC Charter, because you could argue the BBC. You could argue that the BBC Charter impedes them from just being free reign. In other words, they're fighting with one hand behind their back against other producers. But then does the BBC, as whatever it was, end, and then it's just lots of commercial TV?
Well, if there's adverts in BBC programs, the BBC will die, and so will the other advertised-supported television channels, because there just isn't the advertising to go around.
Has the BBC got a leg to stand on anymore, though? Because it's gone down market anyway. It's decided to chase the ratings that ITV used to be famous for chasing.
Hasn't it?
I was just going to say that the idea of the BBC, my understanding, because it's the same here with the ABC, was to show people alternatives. But what's happened is they're just doing the same thing or variations on the same thing, rather than giving people genuine alternatives to commercial television. So I mean, the BBC
the BBC have bought what used to be an ITV show, Gladiators, and put it on BBC. Is it progress? I don't. Yeah. Why are we going backwards on? I don't understand why the BBC seem to think we want programs. And now, look, I get ratings, so please don't knock me down, Thread. But stuff like Traitors and stuff like that, these are all kind of versions of a game show thing. I thought that was very ITV, to be honest.
I don't get the attraction, but you guys love the Traitors, don't you? It bombed, it died a death here. As did Gladiators died a death here too.
I liked Australia.
But you guys love them.
So it's interesting.
We have good taste.
We see in Australia. I mean,
I'm sorry about neighbours.
Everybody can make a mistake.
I was going to say about Hey it's Saturday, but anyway. But yeah.
Oh, I didn't mind Hey it's Saturday, but it would mean nothing to anyone that's not an Australian. Very dodgy television, though. It was. I don't know what you compare it to. What was your popular Saturday morning show over there? That was the opposite to Swap Shop. Yeah, it's basically an Australian version of Tiswas, and it was a kid show that became a popular evening show.
So we've got Frankenstein here. The ABC in Australia should also become a pay-to-view streaming service rather than forcing us to pay for it with our taxes. The thing is, what would we lose? When I lived in Australia, we missed the BBC. I know there's an element of Britain that, the BBC was good at. We've come back, and I wouldn't say that now. But the BBC used to be something else. And you did miss that.
Radio 3 is still the BBC.
Yeah, no, but that's because it's got its fingers in so many pies that there's still some bits that are cooking all right. But the organization has lost the plot, and I think it for many years it was lucky. It always got away with not understanding the working class, but the working class would watch it. Now
I feel like it doesn't have an identity anymore. That's as an outsider, because that's what it's like here with the
When
ABC.
Breakfast Telly started, BBC began to die. That's when I left as well.
Yeah, it was always very middle class because, of course, it was mostly Oxbridge, and you had the Old Boys Network, but
Ealing.
Yeah, but this is what I mean. So it was very London centric. I mean, to get on TV, even up to now, you always have to have an Essex accent or something. They'll find somebody from around the corner. They struggled to find somebody like Steph McGovern from Middlesbrough. It took a while for them to attune their hearing. Sometimes the BBC would still show subtitles for a Geordie accent. I mean, that was only a few years ago. I mean, this is the same country. But oh God, if you say
subtitles on oh dear me, the bum one, that for Australia, believe it or not, British subtitles on oh God, whatever it was, that one that's still going. Yeah, when it started, a couple of years. Weird, isn't it? You do know which one I'm talking about, don't you? No, I'm talking about
Home and Away?
The British one with the shot of the Thames. Oh, God. Long COVID, folks. Brain rot. You don't know what it is.
I think we've become those old guys with Alzheimer's now. Get us out of this, Brendan. Move on. Let's move on. Get us out of it. Oh, he's gone now.
I was saying,
Turn him off.
About the BBC, ABC, public service broadcasting, and whether in 2025 any of us have got that.
EastEnders.
Do we really want?
Yes.
To still subsidize public service? Because I think it's the law of diminishing returns.
No.
My other argument about the BBC, having said I really did like it before and I did look forward to seeing some of its output before, but I do think it was always extremely middle class, but it got away with it. The trouble now is it's extremely middle class, but it's preachy. And actually,
Doctor Who, what other programs do you think preach?
News, the Brexit debate. I mean, we're going to have a Brexit debate, but when Brexit happened, the BBC decided which side it was on.
I don't think it did.
Oh, you need to have a look at some of the news programs.
I did.
Yeah, well, as you know, if you voted Brexit, you obviously only had one brain cell. If you voted Remain, you were a lovely, beautiful, European-loving, gorgeous person. This is how it was sold.
I've got a video clip I can show you about me talking about that.
Yeah, it might be you talking about it. I'm talking about all of BBC's output.
This is Channel 5.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm enjoying this. I feel like I'm on Spear now.
Honestly, Boomer
Doug,
I do think 2016 was a key year for the BBC. Number one, Trump won, and they had a panic attack because some of the news output on Sky and everywhere has turned into opinion rather than fact. So we had an unfortunate. It was unfortunate because it wasn't planned, was it? But somehow we had a Brexit vote and we had Trump in the same year, and organisations like the BBC went into absolutely hysterical fits. They couldn't deal with this.
Radio 4 loathes Trump and says so specifically.
And they loathe Brexit. And they loathe anyone who voted it, and they give everybody who voted it an extremely hard time. But if you vote to say you want to join a European sovereign power, which makes no blooming sense at all, that's great. And they don't look at any of the inconsistencies in the EU. They don't look at, it's one rule for one and then it changes when the Germans want to change something. They never look at that. And what I found rich about the BBC is the BBC, when the Brexit vote happened, their news output hardly ever focused on any European story. But suddenly, because of the Brexit vote, we're nasty anti-Europeans. And I thought, BBC, you never showed me any news on Europe. You always showed me America or somewhere else. You never told me about the German elections. You never told me about what was happening in southern France. They themselves showed no interest.
I was in Australia at the time, so I didn't notice any of that, I'm afraid.
Oh, well, you see, me with my politics degree, I'm always on it. So what's Brian saying here? Man, Simon is good. You have to be ready when he challenges you.
Hello, Brian.
I'll always come back.
I've been at it a long time.
Well, it's in different ways, but I mean, it's my opinion. Of course, it's only my opinion, but I do think it puts BBC in an awkward position now because, you know, a bit like you've got the Trump thing in America now, you've got the country split. And in Britain, you've still got a split, which is how people treat each other when it comes to that one topic. And it feels as though the BBC took sides.
Radio 4 is extraordinarily balanced, as is BBC World Service.
No.
Oh, have you listened to the Today programme every morning for the past 5 years?
But would you want to when they've clearly told you in their smug delivery how they feel?
Well, if you haven't listened to the Today programme, you haven't heard what they actually do say. I must admit, I have not listened to any of their podcasts, but the stuff that is said in the Today is extremely all over the place. I mean, seriously is. I mean, honestly.
If you're trying to defend that the BBC suddenly has a slant towards Middlesbrough or a slant towards the northeast, I'm open to it, but I doubt it because I know how most of the producers present anything about this region.
There is a.
Oh, he's gone again.
He's gone again. Did you pull the plug on him?
There's a new woman on the Today programme who has a Middlesbrough accent. A woman. And she was on this morning. At least I think it's a
woman. And she's
let's just remind ourselves: the BBC's been going 100 years, and that's the third Middlesbrough person ever on. Rod Liddle, as you know, was an editor on the Today programme, and he is based in Middlesbrough. And he certainly voted Brexit, and he certainly doesn't think that the BBC editorial policy is akin to anything called neutral. It's just interesting. It's just interesting. And the Spin Sphere, as you know, we did one trial with the Trump inauguration, and I did say to Simon to come on, and I think Simon said yes. And we will have our Brexit debate, and we will have our immigration debate, and we'll have our net zero debate. And I think that's what everybody's talking about.
Please.
Well, that's what everyone's talking about in our country, in Australia, in America, isn't it? It's net zero, it's immigration. Well, less so Australia because they've sorted it out.
Well, not quite, no.
Oh, I think Australia knows what they're doing.
Some of them know what they're doing, absolutely. They've got an extremely well-established Green Party.
Well, they've got a very established border policy. I mean, we even watch the programmes on TV, don't we?
Well, stopping people coming in is avoiding the point. They should be stopping people wanting to leave. That's the issue that should be addressed. Nobody's strong enough to do that.
What you're not allowed?
Oh, go back to sending convicts here. Send the convicts here. That's what we should do.
Well, the biggest historical irony, I suppose, on the planet is little tiny Britain sent convicts to this massive country, and now Australia is seen as this golden bastion, and we're all squashed on this little island. We got it wrong. We should have kept the convicts here and all gone over there.
Of the three of us, only one is still in Australia. The other two went there, came back.
Yeah, but I came back to make money.
I came back to make money as well.
Yeah,
it's so difficult in Australia.
Yeah, I came back to be mortgage free, and it worked because we came back straight after the.
There's plenty of money.
Well, we made
here.
our money from Australia because buying in Australia, doing up our apartment in Brisbane, and coming back meant we made an awful lot of money on that property deal and the foreign exchange rate. So basically, that gave us our kind of boost for the rest of our life. So Australia, I mean, I'd love to be in Australia now, but sometimes I don't know. I compromised financially for that. Yeah. So I tell you what, isn't it funny? You talk about TV, but TV's about us. And if it's about us, it goes on any topic possible.
Yes, indeed. And so it should have been.
That's what I like about what we're doing. It doesn't have to be just, as you said, listing your favourite TV shows, which is fun. It affects you in so many different other ways. That's what I think is important.
We seem to have, I mean, we've gone from
TV is
teaching, fair enough, to maybe more news output. And
well, you used to be a teacher, didn't you, Brendan?
And I'm
Were
gay,
you
I
a
think,
teacher or something? And you're gay, yeah. And you like,
I do like
a two-hander, apparently. Yeah, so yeah.
I thought that was a technical term for, you know, like if EastEnders does only 2 characters in an episode. I thought that was known as a two-hander.
It probably is.
Two interviewers and one interviewee, I think. Well, I used to work in news once upon a time.
Well, I did think when they did a special with EastEnders and there was 2 characters only, and that was really good at the time. It felt groundbreaking, very theatrical. And they said, oh, that was a great two-hander. And I've always just logged that as a kind of term.
I didn't think of it.
I'll stick with it.
Yeah,
it
well,
makes me smile.
So yeah, we were just starting to mention we'd moved from where we started to news output, and that hits us all because it is about us. And I think that's when we get irate sometimes, because this is where TV's grown up and maybe grown up too much, because equally they think they're very important. There was a time they just got on with their job. Now because they think they're important, they're trying, I think the news tries to sway us.
It is horribly impossible.
That's my concern. News has become propaganda, really, hasn't it? I mean, I know there are balanced news reports out there, as Simon said, but the mass-produced popular news is by and large propaganda, depending on who's reporting it. And now people are going, not even looking at the news, they're going to bloody YouTubers and Instagram people to get the news, which is even more divisive.
The BBC now has a kind of, it's not quite called a net zero correspondent, but it's bloody close to it. A climate correspondent who is quite close to the editorial line is I Sleep with Ed Miliband, because to be quite honest, it really is ridiculously close to the Labour Party line of net zero is such a beautiful thing for Britain to do. And if the rest of the world loves digging up coal, it doesn't matter because we will be poor but worthy. And they've got a correspondent. He'll be on about 80 grand, spilling out this line that not all the country agrees with. It's mad.
It's because it's not quite right. I mean, that's why I'm not Labour. I'm Green. Green's got a much bigger, all-inclusive view of things. I'll save that for the politics show.
Well, we're spilling on. I mean, you know, we are where we are. I mean, net zero. I mean, Australia just keep, you know, away coal, everything. They're doing what the hell they want over there. They're making their money out of China. Meanwhile, we're shutting our coal mines, pouring cement down our bloody oil wells, and
importing coal and oil.
Sorry,
importing coal and oil.
Exactly. And whether you like Trump or not, at least Trump is saying they're going to drill oil to make money for America until the situation is fair. Meanwhile, Britain's going, oh, it's not about fairness. It's about us being first. And you think, oh, for God's sake, you know.
What it should be is local production for local consumption, which is a really, really old thing that the Greens have been talking about.
Would you agree, though? Would you both agree that if you had an climate correspondent on a public service broadcaster, that for them to say the net zero line misses the point, that actually surely we all in every country need to agree a proper pact? Other than that, it's a free-for-all.
Well, sadly, yes. But forever, it's always been the argument that if we do something by ourselves, we'll get economically stamped on by everybody else. The odd thing about Trump that might be good is he's forcing everybody to become insular in terms of their, the production of their energy resources. But, and here's the good bit, Now, for the first time ever, it is possible for every country to be energy self-sufficient using solar systems and cope with the fact that it gets dark sometimes by using batteries, old ones out of electric cars and things. And there's so many technologies advancing every day, and so many for power consumption and for power reduction. There's so much happening. I mean, look at deep sea.
Well,
Reduce the
well, let me
amount
just
of energy used for.
well, let me just
for
take you.
AI
I mean, let
a
me just
huge
take
amount.
you to
In a
this,
couple of weeks.
because we're doing talking TV. It's not. It's not much
Yeah.
of
Oh,
a
that's
jump.
right. I forgot.
It's not much of a jump if I said, why don't they make Tomorrow's World? Because that program was educational and
Yeah.
was and it was optimistic, and it was always just ahead. I mean, sometimes they showed you what the future looked like, and it was never going to look like that. But I know they had was it Beyond 2000 in Australia?
I was going to say, we had one with the very futuristic name of Beyond 2000. How futuristic.
And
Yeah.
do you still have it on?
Nah. We're beyond 2000 now.
This is what I mean. That type of...
But no, there's nothing. There should be, but there's nothing like it. No, you're absolutely right. That would be a brilliant idea, especially with technology going the way it is, AI and everything else that's out there. I would watch a show like that.
Full, if you look closely, and YouTube absolutely filled with those sorts of shows. And I watch them every day, 2 or 3, sometimes 4 or more. There's a huge.
Oh, absolutely. I've seen them too, but nothing on mainstream television, which is a missed trick, I think.
It's disaster. I mean, the number of things I have learned that can keep me feeling positive about the future through looking at very carefully chosen YouTube channels is colossal. I mean, I would have stuck my head in a bucket years ago if I had not got any idea of what is coming next. And basically, it's going to the transition period is all.
I'll keep talking. One of the things was Tomorrow's World. Being a youngster was a lovely thing because you could actually, you were still at school and you could see possibly future careers. You could see some. We loved tech, and I think it was doing more than the sum of the program. It was selling a future. It was selling a vibe, and
it was selling a positive future too.
Yes.
And to be honest, we've gone and mentioned Brexit and stuff like that, but the truth is, stuff like Tomorrow's World didn't say we're only showing you British inventions or Australian inventions. They were showing you world inventions, and so it had a lovely global feel to it.
But effectively, Tomorrow's World is now the New Scientist podcast, I can't remember. There are several Radio 4 shows that cover this very well indeed.
These people do cover it, and I do watch them. But I think what these Tomorrow's World and Beyond 2000 did is they packaged the shows in such a way that it was palatable to people who weren't remotely interested in the technical side of things, but they loved the idea of the positivity and what was out there without getting too bogged down with the specifics of the whys and the hows. It was more the vision of what was ahead of us. And I think TV channels have missed a trick there. I think they've lost touch. I think a lot of the terrestrial, certainly here in Australia, they've lost touch with what people want. We have most of the stuff we have on television is game shows, news shows, and the odd soap. And the rest of it's
watching. I'd love to front a reboot of Tomorrow's World.
Well, but we wouldn't allow you. We wouldn't allow you, Simon, because I was going to make another point about Tomorrow's World in this country, and then Doug can tell us about Beyond 2000, which is again in these terrible, dusty 70s and 80s. We had Judith Hahn, and as Rhys Roder said, we had Philippa Forrester, we had Maggie Philbin, we had some strong female presenters of a science program. Again,
we had Amanda Keller, who is very famous here for being incredibly funny and intelligent lady. And so there you go.
Again, this is the point. Oh, we were in the dark ages. No, we weren't at
No,
all. We were not at
wasn't
all.
that
But
dark.
they've taken that program away. So you can't have that optimistic vibe about the world. You can't have some good accidental female representation. Judith Hahn was a fixture of our program on Tomorrow's World. Went through nearly all the period. And then Maggie Philbin, then later Philippa Forrester. And these were all good presenters. And they explained it, they packaged it, and they said, yeah, bang. And yeah, in hours, I don't know about, I think Beyond 2000, was it about an hour long? I think it was. Yeah. Whereas Tomorrow's World was just before Top of the Pops on a Thursday normally. But it was just packaged, bang, 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 off your pop. And it fires you up.
It's exactly right. It was like a magazine show, and it didn't go too much into the technicalities. It was more about the wow factor and, as I said, the positivity of it.
James Burke's Connections was the one that went into the depth, and that was marvelous.
Yeah,
I mean, we'd want that back. I mean, that was the BBC's Cosmos, effectively.
You see, there was a time we had Horizon, QED, Arena. We had all these documentary programs. As you just listed, it's now human kind of, Love Island. It's all sex. It's all game shows. It's all tat.
Oh, God, yeah.
And
bloody sex everywhere. Bloody sex.
Isn't it funny, Doug, that these... Now, you see, the TV producers can't have it both ways. So which way is it? One is that the 70s and 80s were these terribly sexist, racist dark ages, but they're happy now to make programs that have sexually explicit content, naked people.
Do you know what our most popular show is here? It's called Married at First Sight. It's terrible. It's terrible. It's about these terrible, superficial people that pretend to be married, and it's all about just backstabbing. And
so, aren't they progressive, these producers nowadays? Aren't they amazing?
No.
Exactly.
No.
Daz Blue reminds us also, two of the most beloved kids.
Daz Blue needs to come on here. I like his taste.
Sorry, I was just saying, two of the most beloved kids' TV presenters from the 70s were both black. Derek Griffiths, who was brilliant, Fluella Benjamin. Yeah, black and a woman, and nobody batted an eyelid. They were just great presenters. True, I was there. No. I was sat with my little straw and milk bottle watching Fluella Benjamin, and
bloody milk
Griffiths, great. In fact, I saw him on a YouTube clip the other day. He was in the Morecambe and Wise show. Yeah,
that's where the
he was in the Morecambe and Wise show, and it was funny because Morecambe and Wise did. They actually just mimed to the Jungle Book.
I remember that.
Derek Griffiths is the Jaguar. I've forgotten his name. He was the Black Jaguar. I don't know if they'd allow that now, but anyway. Okay. So there you go. Horizon, QED, Arena, and we think TV's got better, or should I say the TV producers think they're amazing? No, it's a sliding scale of crap.
Nah.
We need Horizon back.
And they've got to remember, we saw all this. And as people are saying, Divorced at First Sight, Married at First Sight, Naked Attraction, Love Island. They really do think we're obsessed with one thing. Or should I say the producers are.
What's that one you guys have got as dated, not dated, where they show the veil lifts and the woman gets to see various bits of the man and then vice versa. Yeah, what the hell?
They always start saying it's a social project. They always say it's a special. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
I was about to swear.
It's called voyeurism. That's what it's called. Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, then. Right. Well, we've gone from crime to teaching to bad habits to naked attraction to TV producers thinking that in 2025 that 1970s programs are disgusting, but they'll make Naked Attraction and Married at First Sight. Yeah. Well done. We've moved on. Talking TV tells you to get a life and sort yourselves out because you're rubbish TV producers, and some of us had an idea. Anyway, thanks in the thread. You've been humouring us, talking about strong women, talking about really good role models. We could go on, and we probably will.
Thank you for sticking with us too. We certainly diverged a bit, but it was fun.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Doug. And Doug, of course, you will be doing your deep cuts, won't you?
I've got plenty to work with. For those of you that don't know, my channel, Boomer Doug, I do an after show, which will show highlights of this show and I also read out some comments from the previous show. So if you watch, you might find that your name is in there. And I'll upload that Tuesday.
Right. Well, goodbye, everybody. See you again. I think the next time I'm scheduled on is
goodbye.
My podcast. Yeah, is available only online or indeed on Ambron Radio at 2 o'clock at 12 o'clock on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays on Ambron.
We'll get the time right, and we won't watch it, will we?
It's radio only.
Oh, it's not. It's not your fault. It's their fault. Okay.
Okay then. Well, have a good afternoon, everybody. Have a good night, Doug. Bye for now.
Sleep well.
Thanks, guys. It was fun.